Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you guys are. Thanks for joining us in another episode of Industry Connects, our podcast where we try to connect our AEC professionals to our peers and friends around the world. Today, I've got my friend Bryan Ross joining us from Queensland. Thanks, Bryan, for joining us in this podcast.
Yep, no worries, Deepak. My pleasure, mate. And thanks for extending us the invite. It's a bit of an honor, to be honest.
It's our honor, mate. It's our pleasure. Thank you. So tell us, Bryan, where are you based? Where are you located?
I am based in Brisbane, which is in the southern part of Queensland. So it's probably about 1 hour away from the New South Wales-Queensland border. I work in our head office for ADG. We have a couple of offices kind of scattered around ADG, around Australia, with the Brisbane office being our biggest office. It's probably, suppose, our headquarters, and it's got our biggest team here too. So, yeah, I'm based in the Brisbane team. And
fantastic. I'm going to talk about your role at ADG in a few minutes, but let's first understand you as a person. So I remember you joined us in one of a panel discussion that we did last year, and you were talking about your kids and your family. So tell us who you all have in your family.
All right. Yep. No problem. So I'm kind of new to the whole father game. Only been a father for the past 4 years. And I've got two beautiful boys. So my eldest son Ollie is about to turn 4 in November, and my youngest just turned 2 at the end of April.
Awesome.
And I'm very family orientated, opposed to where I used to be, where I was very work orientated prior to having kids. And I think having kids has kind of made me see the light. And that, life is there to be enjoyed and not just fully focus on work. So my passions, like the things I like to do is really, really like to spend a lot and as much time as possible with my wife and my kids. So, and whether that's spending time at home doing garden work and teaching the boys, a thing or two, or, just basically being their slave for the day and daddy do this, daddy do that. I try and make sure that I'm there to be with the boys and, enjoy the time as much as possible, because everyone you talk to out there who does have kids, they say the time flies, mate. And yeah, the last 4 years has definitely flown by so quick. And I really try not to miss a moment of my kids growing up at this young period of time. So before they get their little attitudes and, when they hit their teens, they're not going to really want to know mum and dad. So yeah, really I'm family orientated right now, and really got a good focus and passion for my kids, my family, and trying to do what's best for them at the moment.
That's fantastic. I still remember in that panel discussion, you mentioned that you try to be the best dad and the best husband you can every day. Now that is actually a really, really good thing to do and to say. So that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
I must say there are a couple of ground rules that I always said in the podcast. The first one is that we are not allowed to use the term pandemic, COVID or something. So if you or I, if any of us use this term, we'll have to put a gold coin in the jar, which we'll use to then buy each other a drink if we use that term.
All right, no worries, mate. Sounds fair.
Yeah, but I also need to mention that we in Sydney, we've been in lockdown for almost 3 months now. I tried cutting my own hair, which was an absolute disaster, so I have to apologize about my hair in advance.
All right.
Okay, so you mentioned that obviously you spend a lot of time with your kids and you're a family-oriented man. Tell me about your vacations, where obviously in Queensland you guys are not in lockdown, so you're allowed to travel. So what's your best place to go and have vacations?
Well, this year we've all been about, since the situation. I won't refer to the terms that you refer to. So since the situation came upon us, and we've been pretty fortunate in Queensland that we're not in very strict lockdowns where New South Wales and Victoria have been in. So this year, my wife and I really made a big decision to make the most of it with the family, and we've joined the camping trail. So we do a lot of camping throughout different parts of southeast Queensland, I would say. We like to go to the Sunshine Coast area. We've done a fair bit there. And we do a little bit of the Gold Coast, and also going a little bit out west, but not too far away from home. Probably about 2-3 hours is our max travel time, just with the kids being in the car for so long. So originally we said at the start of the year, and we mapped out at the start of the year, we said, all right, we'll try and do one camping trip every month and go away for 2 or 3 nights. That was going on plan and was really going well until we got to about May, June. It was getting really, really cold. And yeah, we just had to end up taking too much camping gear with us, and the kids were freezing, I was freezing. Yeah, it was just too cold for us, mate. So we scaled it back a bit, and we had a bit of a break there in between from about the start of May till about 2 weeks ago. We went back out, and we're back on the venture now to try and do as many camping trips before the end of the year. But we do have a pretty big camping trip planned for the end of this year, which we're really excited about, and it's basically all the trips we've been doing in this year, each month leading up to the one at the end of the year. We're going to be going to Moreton Island, which is an island just off the coast, and it's about a 45-minute barge ride, I believe. But we've got a pretty big group of friends going. We've got about 12 cars going, and we're going for 7 nights. So there's about
Nice.
25 adults and about 12 to 15 kids, and 7 nights on the beach. So should be pretty epic, mate. And the family's really looking forward to that, and me myself, I'm extremely looking forward to that one. So it'd be good to get away.
That's fantastic. It's funny, I was actually doing an event that was about 3 a.m. our time, a couple of months back, and there was this gentleman from UK on the call, Paul Munford, and I was telling them it's absolutely freezing. And Paul asked, what's the temperature? And I said 7 degrees. And Paul started laughing, and he said 7 degrees is no freezing.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's the same thing with Queenslanders as well. When you say it was really getting cold, it was what, about 10, 15 degrees?
Yeah, during the day. I think at night time, when you go out into like the bit of the hinterland and stuff like that, it does get a little bit lower than that. But
Oh, right.
yeah, it still doesn't compare to what they have over in the UK and probably what Victoria and New South Wales have.
Yeah,
Queensland
100%.
kind of seems to have an endless summer here
Yeah.
compared to other parts of the world.
Yeah. One of my colleagues, if it gets under 25 degrees, he has to wear a jumper.
Oh,
He
no,
can't
geez.
go out if it's 25 degrees and under without a jumper. It's really funny. All right,
Yeah.
so coming to your role at ADG, let's start with what is ADG and what is your role at ADG?
Okay. ADG is an engineering company, so we're about 20 years young. We've got a couple of offices across Australia. So we've got Brisbane being our headquarters, and then we've got Sydney, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast. We've got an office in Melbourne, Perth, and Darwin, and then also an office in Toowoomba. So we're quite scattered nicely around the country. We've got about 220 staff at the moment. We've actually grown quite a bit since the situation happened. And so we kind of sit in about 220 staff. What we do, our core business is structural engineering, but we are a multidiscipline company. So throughout each of those offices, we've got structural as a discipline. We've got construction services, which is like our temp works division. We've got a hydraulics department, a civil department, and also newly within the business as of the last 12 months, and just before the situation happened, we've got 2 new departments that kind of that came to fruition, which is our automation department, which is we've got a team of coders and software developers and anything to do with automation. These guys can create and develop. And then the other spin-off that we had from that was our CDS team, which is our construction data solutions team.
Yep.
And what these guys do is they do a lot of like maintenance and facilities maintenance and inspection and reporting, dilapidation reports. So there's a lot of old buildings around town, basically a lot of old buildings, that need a lot of refurb work or inspection reports done, and this is what these guys do. I'm actually quite jealous of what these guys actually got the other day. So they actually, to assist them with their reporting and all their inspections, they've actually gone out and purchased $60,000 worth of drone equipment and cameras.
Wow.
So yeah, we've got our own in-house drone, which is pretty special and pretty unique.
Wow.
As well as with all our point cloud scanners and stuff like that too. So it does add another, essentially another string to our bow, or a string to our guitar, however you want to phrase it. And it does give us a little bit of leverage that we can do a little bit more than just your traditional engineering. We can offer these other facets that kind of complement what we do as a business.
100%.
So, yeah, and my role within the business, Deepak, I'm the national drafting manager. So my role and responsibility is to kind of look after all the CAD systems or the Revit systems, more so the BIM systems, making sure that everything that we do at ADG, that there's a standard that everyone's following, making sure that we are keeping up with, essentially the latest and greatest technologies out there, and also responsible for making sure that the people are getting trained in accordance with company systems and procedures too. So not so much a resource focused based role, but more of a technical coming in from the side kind of role.
When I came to see you guys in your new office, that was my last trip, and obviously I haven't been able to travel since then because of the lockdown. But that's actually a pretty cool new office that you guys have got there. And I think you showed me the area where the data team was sitting as well.
Yeah. So we have recently just relocated. So our ADG, our Brisbane office is inside one of Queensland's biggest builders' yard. So Hutchinson Builders. We shared. There's two buildings there. One, the second building that we shared with 50% of the Hutchinson team was 2 stories, and we had the entire top floor. And we kind of outgrew that space the last couple of months at the start of this year, and Hutchies didn't really want to lose us as an engineer or as a company to work closely with them, and so we've kind of just moved next door to them, which is the old Subaru car dealership, and we retrofitted a car dealership with a mechanical workshop in it to become our new ADG office. So yeah, if you ever want to get any insight into what a retrofit of a mechanics workshop looks like, come to ADG and you'll see something a little bit different, mate.
Nice, man. Nice. That's really cool. So during the summertime, New South Wales and Victoria, we've got what we call as daylight saving time. So we've got daylight saving starting where our times obviously move forward by an hour, but Queensland doesn't do that. So tell us the story. Is it true that it was all about the cows?
Mate, I actually don't know what the truth is about that, but I think that might be one of the rumours going around, that it'll confuse our cows and they won't know when to produce milk, or something like that. But I think it's something, myself, I would definitely love to have daylight savings introduced, because it's actually weird, Deepak. If you look at the border, you've got people that live on this side of the border, they will have daylight savings time, and then people that live, essentially 100 metres down the road and they're on the other side of the border in New South Wales, they will have daylight savings.
Correct.
So, it's one that's hard to wrap your head around, that it's been just designated straight down the borderline, but I think there's a lot of Queenslanders out there that would like that extra bit of sunlight in the afternoon. And, I think, especially from someone like myself, you get home pretty late, especially in winter, you get home pretty late, and then by the time you get home, it's dark. If you had daylight savings, you'd get home, you might have an extra hour's worth of sunlight, and you can enjoy that with the family outside.
100%.
So, yeah, but the whole cow story, mate, I don't know if that's a myth or if it actually is true, but, someone started that some while ago, and I think the rest of Australia sticks with that one.
Correct, that's right. So in winter's time, there's not really much you can do during all that time, but summers we absolutely love it because there's daylight till about almost 9 in the evening. So there's so much stuff you can do with your family, especially people living next to the coast. They can go to the ocean, beaches and so on, and spend so much time there. Even after you get back from work, let's say about 5:30, 6 o'clock, you still have at least a couple of hours, if not more, of nice daylight to enjoy.
Yeah, I 100% agree, mate, and I think that's a luxury that everyone would love to enjoy.
Yep.
So,
All right, so how long have you been associated with BIM and digital engineering side of it?
I've been in the industry for almost 16 years now. So, in terms of using BIM, it's probably, I started using Revit in about 2008, 2009.
Nice.
So it depends what level of BIM we're talking about, but between, 10, 12 years ago and now, I've been involved in various levels of BIM on different types of projects. So I would say probably, using Revit for the last 10 to 12 years, but if talking like a collaborative environment where, we're actually getting engaged and working with other clients on cloud-based platforms and delivering, things past LOD 300, I'd probably say the last 3, 4, 5 years, with projects here and there that we've been delivering on the higher end of the BIM scale, where it's just, a little bit more involved than just producing documentation from the actual model itself. So.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. It is important for people to understand that the whole project can't be LOD 400 or LOD 500. It'll be elements in the project that will be LOD 400 or 500 or whatever you want to
Agreed.
call it. But yeah, so you guys were still using Revit Server till last year, but now you guys are planning to move to the cloud technology, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. So we've been using Revit Server for, basically since we started the whole Revit journey 10 or 12 years ago. We were early adopters of the Revit Server, and Revit Server's really worked well for us for all our offices across Australia. Um, our more remote offices like Darwin and Perth, they actually struggle a little bit with the Revit Server, which is now influencing our decision to kind of move to BIM 360. So all of those approvals have been, approved by the higher powers within ADG. So within the next couple of months, I'm hoping by the end of the year, if we do decide to move a project to the Revit Server, it'll be moving that project to BIM 360 in lieu of the Revit Server, and hopefully drop our Revit servers. We have done some testing in our those offices that have been struggling, and the results is actually it's actually chalk and cheese. We're actually finding much better results with BIM 360 because we're just purely relying on the download speed of the model to the user's computer, as opposed to coming back to a central database within the business and then going back out to the offices. So that has influenced our decision quite immensely. Probably also all the other functionality that's now starting to open up within BIM 360 platform, where we can do a lot more collaboration internally with our engineers and drafters, as well as our own ADG team and our external consultants too. We've really been enjoying working on the projects that are BIM 360, and simple functions like the publish function just makes, issuing a model to the architect or to the client, I would say probably about 5% of the time as it would be to strip it and then, upload it to Aconex or a file share, and then they have to download it, vet the file and load it into their project. So there's probably a number of reasons moving towards BIM 360. Also, our IT has thrown their 2 cents in the hat, and from a maintenance perspective, BIM 360 is going to be a lot less maintenance because all the
Correct.
maintenance is done by Autodesk, and they are actually quite good with their notification of giving
Correct.
people prior notice when they're actually going to be doing the maintenance. So I think it just ticks the boxes from a user level. It's going to tick all the boxes from a company level, and also from an IT perspective too.
Yep, yep. I remember it must have been about 5 years back now, maybe more, when it was still collaboration for Revit. One of our
Yeah,
customers in Melbourne, they were working on Darwin Hospital project. They had a few users in Darwin and they had a few users in Melbourne. And the Melbourne users were saying that when they open the file from the Darwin server, it takes them about 45 minutes to open the file. And one
correct.
out of 3 times, the program would crash.
Yeah,
So then I was actually sitting in the boardroom with the IT manager and the engineering manager and a few draftees there. And they
yeah,
tested collaboration for Revit at that time. So somebody uploaded the file, and this user, the first time they opened the file, it took them about 20 odd minutes. And after that, it used to take them literally about under a minute to open the file. And syncing was a lot faster as well. And they said,
yeah,
it's absolutely no-brainer. As you said, chalk and cheese.
yeah. So I think that like those sorts of comments are we've been receiving those sort of comments too with our our drafters around the business too, and once again that's going to influence our decision immensely. So we just had an instance yesterday where one of our drafters, or I'll refer to them as our technicians, he is currently relocating to Hobart. We've just opened up a practice in Hobart. Sorry, I forgot to mention that before, but we've just opened up a practice in Hobart, and he was on the verge of jumping on the plane, getting to Hobart from Sydney, and Sydney went into lockdown. So he's kind of been stuck in a bit of hotel quarantine for a couple of weeks now, and yeah, he was working on a project for the last couple of weeks, and he kept complaining, saying, "Oh, there's one project, it's taking forever and a day, 45 minutes to open up," and from our perspective, that's just not acceptable in today's world. So we are making plans at the moment with this particular project and this person, and moving that project straight to BIM 360. within the next couple of weeks, just so we can gain that efficiency from opening and closing and synchronization times too.
Yep.
Because I think a lot of people take that for granted, the fact that, the time it takes to open a project and to synchronize the project and it closes, that's all time that could be spent doing production work,
100%.
making money for the business essentially.
100%.
So, and it's an easy solution to fix at the end of the day.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I think
100%.
just, and even just that discussion there, if anyone was to try and weigh it up again, you could just simply have that discussion with, your managers or powers to be and just go, well, we've spent, 45 minutes today opening this file when the BIM 360 license is going to cost us, $500 or $800. You're going to make that money back in no time.
Yep, yep. And look, in all honesty, a lot of times people blame BIM or Revit that it's too slow. We can do it faster in AutoCAD. They don't realize the problem is not with the software. The problem is the file sizes and how you are working and how you're storing the files of those sizes. So, but
Yeah.
moving forward, so obviously you've been in the industry for almost 16 years. You have seen massive changes in the industry. Let me ask you this question now. Where do you see the structural industry in the next 5 years?
It's a hard question, eh? Like people always ask that one, and I think the obvious answer is moving away from 2D drawings. I think we will be moving away from 2D drawings, in years to come. Whether that's in 5 years' time, I question that timeline. But in terms of the industry itself, I think we're going to be moving to a more flexible and on-demand workforce too. I think contractors will become a bit more influent within the industry again with all this remote working and working from home. And once all the consultancies have, well, most of them will have systems and procedures in place now, and they'll have all the hardware in place too. It should just be just as easy to deliver the work working from home as it is to working in the office. I think the situation definitely taught, the industry a very hard and fast lesson that, we weren't really ready for. And it promptly forced a lot of companies within our industry to get remote ready, I think. So I think from my perspective, I think we'll be a lot more working from home, a lot more flexible working arrangements as to what hours people will be working. And I think it will be definitely a lot more of a connected industry with all the software going out there at the moment. There's, I always look at the software we have. There's a ton of software out there at the moment, and there's about, 3 or 4 bits of kit that can do the same thing. It's about making sure we use the right bit of kit for each of the applications, essentially. Whether the industry's got that down pat at the moment is probably still a question to be answered.
100%. Actually, I'm going to make a controversial statement here. There's a lot of people in the industry that talk about open BIM and so on. Personally, from where I look at it, I reckon we are still a bit far from achieving that open BIM, kind of collaboration across the board. But I totally agree with you. Flexible workforce is going to be the key. And also, because we've got the hardware and software technology to support that kind of workflows, it's a lot easier for the industry now.
Yeah.
And I must also say, in all honesty, especially the architectural industry, I reckon because architectural industry was one of the first industry to embrace and adapt to the cloud technology. When the situation hit, they were very quickly able to get the workforce to work from remote locations. The only issues that we saw was companies that were still working with those big, bulky desktops. They had a bit of an issue, but a lot of companies moved to these mobile workstations, as we call them now, and they had no problems at all. I totally agree with you. Flexible workforce is going to be really important because we've got the technology, hardware, and software to support that now.
And I think that's across that's not just related to our industry either. I think, it's interesting because my wife's in a completely different industry, Deepak. She's a solicitor for, a betting company, and they've got a team of about 50 lawyers, and they all work from home. And as soon as the pandemic came, they were all working from home, and they've been very slow to get back into the office. And they still encourage work from home because they haven't felt any downtime. So I think it's something that office workers are going to have to get used to. That working from home is just going to become the new normal, or working a combination of working at home and working in the office is going to become the new normal.
Yep,
Um, per se.
100%. By the way, you used the word pandemic, so that's one gold coin there, man.
Ah, sorry.
Yeah. But I actually really like the statement that you made about the structural industry getting away from 2D drawings. This is something that I was discussing with someone really high up the chain at Autodesk going back about 3 years, 3 years, maybe more. And they asked me the question as to how relevant the 2D drawings are going to be in next 6 to 8 years. And
Yep.
the thing is, we've got hundreds and thousands of steel detailers who live and breathe 2D drawings. I've got a very good friend of mine in the US. His name is Ilko, and he is one of the top steel detailers. And as a matter of fact, my Advanced Steel 2022 books, the models that I've got are his models. He gracefully accepted to provide me models for the book. And
Yeah.
for the 2D drawing for volume 2 book, I had the image, and he said, no, I don't like it. And he said, you have not done the drawings right. So
Yeah.
for the cover images, he did the drawings and he placed the dimensions how they are supposed to be. He placed them in the right location and the right format and so on. And he was so particular about it. And I loved the passion that he had about the industry, making sure that because I've used his models in the book, he wanted to make sure that the way the drawings were displayed in volume 2 book, which is all about drawings, they were right, they were following the right standard and so on. So he spent time putting together a drawing that I could use for the cover image, following all the standards. So the passion that some of these steel detailers have, it really amazes me. So sometimes when I think about it, that yes, the 2D drawings might get obsolete in the future. I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, as you mentioned, we don't know that. Yes, everybody wants to go into BIM and 3D and so on. But I reckon, personally, I think 2D drawings would still be an important part of the erection and installation process.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're 100% right there, mate. I don't think we'll ever get rid of 2D drawings because that's essentially what you build off. And
Exactly.
if you read a lot of the BIM execution plans too these days, there's clear instructions in most of them that the 2D documentation is to be derived from the 3D model itself.
Yes.
So, one could easily build a 3D model but not know how to document it and then kind of essentially doctor the drawing so that it looks right in 2D, but then the model's not correct. I'm a big believer that you've got to build the model 100% as it would get built out in site, and then the documentation has to be derived from the model itself. But at the end of the day, if you look at the people who's at the end of the line, and say for instance like your steel, the guys out on site who's erecting the steel, they're going to be working up there with. They're still going to be working with 2D printed drawings for the next couple of years, I believe. I think a big switch for those people out on site will be maybe changing from a 2D drawing, a 2D printed PDF to viewing a 2D file on an iPad if they're not there already. So 2D will always have its place, I believe, because it's been that way forever and a day, and there's just some things you can't build without a 2D drawing, essentially. So, and the other thing that you talked about too, Deepak, was the passion, and I think the passion that what you're describing with your mates supplying you with those that content, I think the passion there is it gets quite lost within the industry too. With the 2D side of things, I think people focus too much on the model. They can build a beautiful model, but at the end of the day, they wouldn't actually know how to put a drawing together and make something that's actually constructible out on site or something that's easy to understand. So, you've got to be passionate about what you do. You've got to be passionate about building model, but you've also got to be passionate about the boring side of things, which might be producing the 2D documentation off that model. So there's a really interesting seminar about 4 weeks ago, and it's one that you spoke at. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a big online one, and then they had a debate at the end. And one of the comments that the speakers made was, we've got this younger generation coming through at the moment, and they're all about technology and they understand how the technology works. And then you've got the older generation that's kind of phasing out, heading towards retirement, and they know how things operate and how things go together essentially. And there's this gap in the middle, and essentially that knowledge base is not being transferred over properly from one generation to the next. So I think, the guys need to get passionate about the software side of things, but they also need to get passionate about the how-to and why we actually put lines on paper or actually develop these models too. So yeah, it was a very interesting conversation, that one, and it was a point that really hit home for me, because I think there's going to be a point where we've got this younger generation coming through and we lose a lot of knowledge, but we get this awesome content, but we don't know what to do with that content essentially.
100%. Now, you've actually nailed it on the head. I've got another example. So, Tyler Community College in the US, they adopted my advanced seal books in their structural design course, and I got contacted by this gentleman, Kenneth Burham. And he told me that he's been working as a draftee in the industry for over 50 years.
Yeah.
And he's seen exactly what you just mentioned, where you've got some new draftees coming out from the colleges and they've got no idea how to put drawings together. And he went back to the community college and started teaching there. And then I've got another friend of mine, David Linsenmeyer. He's I think, the design manager in one of the steel detailing company, and he did the same thing. Because he was struggling with getting the right people with the right knowledge, he actually went back to the educational industry and he started teaching part-time steel detailing so he could get people to understand what exactly is required in steel detailing. So yeah, that kind of passion is required not only in steel detailing, I would say, in a lot of other industries as well, whether it is architecture or even structural engineering as well.
Yeah, and we do something quite similar, Deepak. We've had
Oh, do you?
a very strong relationship with the TAFEs, especially South Bank TAFE down the road. We built a relationship with them about 4 years ago, and every year or 12 months we try and take on two students in their final semester of TAFE, and they complete their work placement at ADG. So, they'll work on all the projects that we work on. We'll teach them Revit, we'll teach them about construction, we'll teach them about how things go together, and we really integrate them and make them feel as part of the team as much as we can. And we've been doing that for the last 4 years. And once they've got to do 240 hours. So once they've done their 240 hours, we then look at the options of, all right, do we have enough work as a business to take these TAFE students on as a full-time role or a part-time role? And 9 times out of 10, we're able to offer them a position within ADG where they continue their learning, and
Fantastic.
It's a paid position within the business too. So, we've retained most of our students, and this year we've taken on 4 students through the TAFEs, which is our biggest intake. We've got the workload there, so the demand's there. And the one thing I tell the students when they come in is, what you've learned at TAFE, it's just the bare bones, and it gives you a good introduction on what you need to know, but in the real world it's a lot different. So they often come back after a couple of weeks of being in the office and go, oh, they didn't teach us half the stuff that you've taught us here in the office. And I was like, well, this is what happens in the real world. TAFE's only got X amount of time to teach you in a certain
Correct.
amount of time.
Correct.
So they can give you some insight, but when you come into the real world, it's the learning curve becomes much more steeper, and it's a lot different to what they actually teach you at the TAFEs too. So
100%.
it's very interesting but I
Yeah.
think there's a bit of a shortage there of what the real world's expectation is to what the TAFEs are teaching for some of the subjects there.
100%. And as a matter of fact, a lot of universities have adopted a similar concept as well. I teach at UTS myself, but
Yep.
one of my really good mates, Taron Pidiachi, he's actually moved to Perth, or moved back to Perth now. He was the digital engineering director at Richard Crooks Construction, and he used to help me with a class at UTS. Especially during the time when the new UDS building was getting built, and Richard Crooks were the builder. But similarly, Holger has been in the industry for almost 20 years. He's worked in Germany, he's worked in the US, he's worked here, and he teaches at UNSW as well. So I am 100% here with you, where you said that the education industry as well as the commercial industry now realize that they need to come together and improve the knowledge that we are imparting on the students. So when they graduate, they know exactly what they're supposed to do, rather than learning from scratch all over again.
Yep, 100% agree.
Yep. All right, so now we come to the most exciting part of this podcast, where you're going to tell us 2 jokes and you're going to give us a tip.
Oh, geez.
Man, you're a dad. You should know a few dad jokes.
Yeah, unfortunately, Deepak, most of my jokes are extremely rude, but I do have a couple which will be, PG for this segment. So
Yep,
I was
yep.
actually telling my wife last night, I was like, I'm going to come up with 2 jokes for Deepak tomorrow, and I don't have any that would be suited. And she's like, shame on you, Ryan, shame on you. So I did do a bit of research, no jokes were coming to mind, but I did read up on a couple of jokes, and I found a few
Don't tell
crackers,
me.
I
So
believe.
you actually did a research on
I
jokes so
had
you can
to.
tell us jokes in this section. Man, I love the dedication. I love the
Yeah,
dedication.
had to, mate. I didn't do any research on the other parts, but I had to do it on the jokes. All
Love it,
right.
man. I absolutely love it.
So here we go. It's all about the delivery they say with the jokes. So, all right. A woman gets on a bus with her baby, and the bus driver says, "Ah, that's the ugliest baby I've ever seen." The woman walks to the rear of the bus and sits down, fuming. Now you can imagine insulting a mother's child, a mother and a child. She would not be happy, mate. She says to the man next to her, "The driver just insulted me." The man says, "You go up there and tell him off. Go on, I'll hold your monkey for you." So,
Oh wow.
so joke
Wow.
number 2.
Yep.
Here we go. This is a dad joke. So, this is one that I'll tell my children when they start dating.
Yep.
So, a son tells his father, "I have an imaginary girlfriend, Dad." The father sighs and says, "You know, you could do better." "Thanks, Dad," the son says. The father shakes his head and goes, "I was talking to your girlfriend."
Yep. 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 Makes sense. Imaginary
Yeah.
girlfriend, and so that's talking to her.
Yeah.
Nice, man. Nice. I'm so impressed. The whole podcast, you didn't have to do any research, but for the joke section, you did the research. You are my kind of person, mate.
Yeah, so that's the only part I was really stressing about, because if I had to come on here and tell a joke about off the top of my head, the only two, well, the ones that came to mind they wouldn't have been sufficient for this segment, mate. So
Yep.
um,
I know what you mean.
yeah,
I know what you mean. All right. So
so
give us a tip.
a tip. Um, Probably one of the tips that I tell all the guys. So one of the things I am pretty passionate about is training people, Deepak, and training the younger generation coming through. And I believe I do a pretty good job of training them with Revit and the construction knowledge, and I give a lot of time and effort to them. Um, and one of the things that I tell the new guys that come into the business is make sure that you work hard. All right, working hard does get noticed. Make sure that you do pay attention to people when they're actually talking to you and trying to give you some advice, and try and be open about that advice too. Um, but with that being said too, there's a flip side to that too. I tell them, because I fell victim to this in my earlier days, was you've got to work hard, but you don't want to live to work. You want to work so that you can live your life at the end of the day. So as well as working hard, make sure you're working to live your life, but don't spend it there day and night at the computer, or you know trying to better your professional knowledge. Make sure you've got time to actually go out there and enjoy life, enjoy your friends, enjoy your family, and essentially in this country, enjoy this beautiful country that we have in
Absolutely.
Australia. Because one thing that I quite often tell my wife is, if I had my time again, I would do things probably a little bit differently. I probably dedicated a fair bit, probably too much time to trying to progress my career to the top, when I could have been spending that time making memories and have stories to tell when I do have children, and pass those stories on. So probably a bit of an opportunity missed, and it's something that I'm really trying to make up for now with my family, and it's something that I actively work on and try very hard and make sure that my professional development and my professional life doesn't impede on my personal and family life in any shape or form. There's times that I have to, where work has to come first, but if I make work a priority, 9 times out of 10, I'm sure I'll be a divorced man within a couple of months.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's one of the things I tell the guys is work hard, but make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. So you're working so you can live and enjoy your life. Don't live to work another day, essentially.
That's fantastic, man. That's a brilliant tip. So with this, we are almost out of time, and I really want to thank you for joining us on this podcast. We had a lot of fun. We learned about you as a family man and also learned about ADG as a company. I also want to just mention this to, or repeat this to our listeners, that a few things that Bryan mentioned was what he sees the industry going to is connected workflow and also flexible workforce, because we've got the hardware and the software to support that now. In his tip, he mentioned a few really important things that actually resonate with me a lot. The first thing that he mentioned was always work hard. And I read it somewhere where it said, try to be the hardest worker in the room, but at the same time, don't live to work. Enjoy your time, especially in this beautiful country that we live in, Australia. Enjoy your time. We've got such beautiful places to visit in this country. And then he also mentioned that it is really important, especially when you're young. Well, actually, it works for everyone, no matter whether you're young or old. If somebody's giving you an advice, pay attention, because obviously they are giving you an advice for a reason. Now, you may or may not take it, but please pay attention, because you might actually learn something from that. And obviously, enjoying life, as Bryan mentioned, is really, really important. So again, Bryan, we really appreciate your time. I know you are a very busy man, so really appreciate you joining us on this podcast, Industry Connects.
My pleasure, Deepak. And once again, thanks for having me, mate. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, you never know. Hopefully, there might be a second coming.
Yes, absolutely, man. Hopefully next year we'll get you back on. Again, so thanks everybody for joining us in this podcast. I'll see you next month, where we've got a special guest joining us all the way from UK. Fingers crossed. All right, thanks, Bryan. You have a good one, man, and enjoy sunny Queensland.
All right, thanks, Deepak. See you, mate.
See you, mate.